This is the Ridiculously Amazing Insurance Agent Podcast, hosted by me, Kelly Donahue-Piro. This show is for growing insurance agencies looking to maximize their biggest investment, their people. Listen to the top agency performance partners clients share their story on how they boosted their performance by executing a plan. Well, hey everyone, I hope that you felt the connection that Heath and I have. It's been like just a whirlwind friendship ever since we first met. And he talks a lot about me being bougie, and he's going to talk a lot about, the difference between our two, firms, basically. Heath's agency really likes to focus on the startup, smaller agencies, and they're in total growth mode. The agency owner is usually the primary producer. And for me, I like working with agencies with 10 plus employees where there's, organizing them all and getting everybody thinking in the same direction and doing a lot of the training makes me very happy. So we kind of break down the top 4 things we see and how smaller agencies and larger agencies can handle them to really grow. And at the end of the day, what we want to do is bring you the best strategy. So if you're listening to this and something clicks, that's the main point. If you're listening to this and you need more, we both want to help you grow too. So depending on what bucket you fall into, let us know. Without further ado, let's break down the 4 top challenges we see independent agencies having. And we're going to break them down piece by piece, depending on your size. I'll see you in the podcast. Hi, everybody. It's Kelly Donahue-Piro here on the Ridiculously Amazing Insurance Agency podcast. And I'm excited today because I get to hang out with my buddy Heath Shearon. You may know him as the mayor of Insurance Town. You may know him from other illustrious insurance careers that he's had throughout the course of time, or you just may know him as his wife's better half, because, we have to give props to Stacy, of course. But I have the mayor of Insurance Town, Heath Shearon, here on this very podcast. How are you doing today, Heath?
I am well, but you and I both know she is the better half in that situation. Stacy is way better than I am.
I'm going to second that. Yeah,
you should.
She's pretty amazing. And she runs the Arkansas PIA, if anybody has that name kind of pop out and is familiar. So we definitely like to support the PIA where possible. So just so everybody knows, Heath and I met because Heath invited me to be on his podcast maybe like a year ago. I feel like I was maybe in the top first 10 podcasts you did. I don't know. I feel like I was an early adopter of your podcast.
I think you're right. But I think it was more like number 20 or 21. But anyway, either way, you were early on. That was definitely early on in the podcasting time. It's been a year, I think.
Before the town got bigger, as Insurance Town got bigger, I was one of the founding Insurance Town members.
That's right. That I will give you. Yes. We didn't have any stoplights up. We didn't have anything there. It was just me.
No, now you got running water, indoor plumbing. The whole thing's working.
That's right. We even have a sheriff election going on right now.
Seriously, I've got to figure out who I'm going to vote for. I take my vote very seriously. I'm hoping that there's a debate coming up.
Oh, there will be.
So, Heath, for those of the, small population, probably people that are listening to this that don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, how you got into insurance, and just the general, elevator story of Heath Shearon, podcaster extraordinaire?
I don't know about that, but I will do that, but I'll do it on as quick as I can, so I don't want to bore people. But I did start off out of college as a pastor at a church. And if you don't know, pastors don't make a lot of money unless you're a TV evangelist. But so I wasn't making a whole lot of money. My father is a longtime insurance agent, still gangster selling to this day at 78 years old. But he told me one day, you gotta, supplement your income by selling some life insurance on the side. Long story short, I started doing that. And then I realized quickly that Dad and I don't work well together. So I branched out, opened up my own place and started selling insurance at 23, 24 years old. And that went really well. And I won some trips and some opportunities came my way to skip over to the carrier side for a little while. Did that, worked for a carrier called EMC for about 10 years, and not to drop names, but if you've heard of them, Employers Mutual Casualty, spent 10 years there, then went to work for Allstate for a little bit, and then back to the agency side. And then recently during the pandemic, started a podcast out of nowhere because I had nothing else to do. And Stacy and I were talking about it. She said, "You've kicked around the idea long enough. There's no more excuses. Time to do it." So I kicked off my podcast in March of 2020, and that has now become my full-time gig. I left the agency world, left Allstate, left Carrier, left all of that behind. And now I am the voice of Insurance Town podcast and doing some consulting work as well.
That's amazing. So you've been on all sides of insurance pretty much.
I have. I've been a carrier rep. I've been an agent. I've done some work in a claims office. I've done some work in some underwriting and field underwriting. And I've even done some work at the association with my wife, planning events and doing some classroom work. I've done some education stuff for her too.
Amazing. Amazing. So what we thought would be kind of fun to do here today, listeners, Heath and I have known each other for a year now, and we spend some time together just shooting the breeze, talking about insurance, because that's what we like to do. And, Heath mentioned that he does some consulting, which you must be like, well, Kelly, why would you have Heath on your podcast? Isn't that what you do? That's awkward, right? Well, in our illustrious conversations, we realized that we kind of target two different types of agencies, right? So I think Heath thinks I'm a little fancy because I try to target the agencies with over 10 people, mostly personal lines and small commercial, because that's my flavor. And I like the 10 plus agencies because there's people and there's processes. And when you're growing to that level, there's like a new set of challenges to get to the next level. So Heath, why don't you share like who your target clients are? Who do you love working with? And that'll kind of help clarify maybe where we start and stop on each other's businesses.
I'll tell you, I do think you're fancy because
I admit my fanciness.
I think it's great to admit that. There's nothing wrong with being bougie, but I tend to like the smaller ones because they don't know if I'm right or wrong. So I could tell them whatever. I'm kidding. But I enjoy, I started consulting with agencies back in my Allstate days, really back in the EMC days, but I was more getting paid as a carrier rep back then. So I had to be a little more slanted. But as I've, done that for the last 10 or 15 years, I really found myself drawing more towards the startup agencies, working with those that are 1 to 5 year old agencies that don't really have a direction, or they're looking to go from captive to independent or things of that nature, because number one, it's so much fun for me to see them launch and to go from 0 to 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 million even, and then I could pass them off to you. However, it's fun because they have that excitement, they have that green. It's kind of like working with my teenager and seeing him just get excited about every little thing. The first girl he likes, or the first bucket he made in basketball, or the first this. And it's just cool to be a part of that. And then as they start hiring and going through, like you said, getting to those processes and procedures and putting those in, that's a lot of fun. It's a long answer to a short question, but that's kind of where I'm at. I like working with those smaller agencies and the ones that are just green with excitement.
Yeah. And, hey, I think we all have our lots in life. I always like to say, as you may be aware, I'm a female, and many agencies are run on the front line by females. So once you get 12 women in a room, and I'm uniquely qualified to say that, and most agency owners are male, although we do have a large book of agency owners that are female that we work with, you can imagine the amount of things I've seen.
Yes. I'm glad I was on mute earlier because I literally choked on my water when you said that. That was pretty funny. But yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
So we thought we're going to break down kind of what we see as, the top agency stress points, because for the agencies that are more in that startup mode, the stress points are actually very similar to the larger side of things. They're different, but I think the stress points are the same. The philosophy, the solution, and just how it approaches is a little different. And I have to tell you guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, I don't know if I can catch it. There's literally the landscaper is on right now.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And
so I was explaining to Heath, I'm in Phoenix, and there's these bungalows where everything's on the first floor. So I typically like getting up tall so that you don't hear the unfortunate landscaper while doing a podcast. And also like everyone can see in and see out. So this landscaper's made a debut. So hopefully it's not too distracting with the background noise.
You could hit mute and let me talk for just a second, because I guarantee you one of the good things about working with small agencies is that one of the agents I'd be working with be salivating over writing that guy's insurance right now. Where one of your bougie guys, I'm just kidding, one of your larger agencies would say, I don't want that client.
So one of my larger agencies would be insuring this hotel with their in-house landscaping.
I got you. Touche.
So, all right, let's talk about the 4 stress points we found in agencies are hiring, right? I think that's stressful when you're smaller and when you're larger. Sales, right? How do we keep growing? Because once you get to a certain size, you have to keep growing. It's harder to refuel your losses. And when you're smaller, you have to grow to afford things. We're going to talk about retention, particularly like carrier challenges, price sensitivity, and getting your team involved, and then time management for both sides. So Heath, why don't we talk a little bit about the hiring side? Because I think hiring is actually harder than ever today in insurance.
Yeah, I would say so, especially like you said, and I'm glad you said that, because both small and large agencies or startup or experienced agencies deal with this in their own way, because I feel like people are people, no matter how, large or small the agency is. And I feel like with smaller agencies that I've worked with, and when you're starting out as an agency, you're dealing with money and how to structure that deal. And you may run into that in a different place. But, you're trying to figure out, do I do commission only? And a lot of people want to come out and say, I need a salary, or I need a base, or I need a certain amount per hour. And you're trying to figure out, when you're starting out and you're a small agency, how to crunch those numbers to make that work. And I think once you can structure that right deal, I think it changes the game. I think that's different for each individual hire that you have, whether it's a salesperson or a CSR. Sorry, what do we call it? Account manager. Sorry, I don't want to say the wrong term, but account manager. And, I think that there's a lot there to unpack. And I'm sure it's different on your side, but there's a lot of similarities there too.
Yeah. So once it gets to be a bit larger, like hiring becomes a challenge because there's different infrastructures and you have different personalities where everyone's got to try to get along. You have to constantly kind of be redoing your organizational chart. Like, okay, so we're going to take processing off these people and move them to like Cover Desk, who we both love and use with Andy Priestman. And so hiring at the larger level, I think you've been burned too by employees. So I like to say, when you run a business, there's a lot of similarities like hiring and dating. And I haven't dated in 15 years. And I know you've been with Stacy for, a long time, but like, you probably have friends that are out in the market, and it's like, once they get burned by there's somebody, they're like, I'm never going out on a date again. And once agency owners get burned by a producer, it's like, I'm never getting one of those again. They don't work. Have you seen that happen at all?
Oh yeah, 100%. But again, it's one of those things that you have to obviously get back on that horse and you have to ride again, especially if you want to grow, and especially whether you're an experienced agency or a startup agency. You can't do it all by yourself. You can't do it all alone. You got to have a team. And so I think that's, the hiring is a huge part of it, getting the right people in. But there's ways to get to that and figure that part out with the right processes and, things like that, as y'all love process and procedures. We do too. Whether you're a large or small agency, those things have to be included in the process of hiring.
Absolutely. And you also have to know when to let someone go, right? Like, I'm a big believer that some agencies hold on to people for too long, either because they feel bad or they don't have another fit. And, you have to be in a place where you can coach people, mentor them, but also have difficult conversations. Like, if it's not working, that should be an open and transparent conversation too.
Yeah. I always hear that whole, is it quick to hire, slow to fire, or slow to hire, quick to whatever that, either way, I think it goes back to each individual situation is completely different and separate from another. So I don't like phrases like that personally, those whole things like that, because I think you can't put those kind of things in a box.
Yeah, I just see that hiring is probably one of our agency size's biggest challenges, and mainly because the work that they have is coming in and they see how it's breaking the rest of their team when they're short staffed. So, it has a bigger impact, I think, when you're a bigger agency to be short staffed and be in the summertime and everyone's just very tense and stressed out. When somebody doesn't work in a smaller agency, a lot of times the owner picks it up, but that also has its challenges with growth too, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say so for sure. I think also another thing that comes to mind is people that, again, an old adage or saying that now they're all going to pop in my head since I hate them, but hiring people that can fog a mirror and they just want to hire the first person they see. And my dad used to always say that. It sounded like such a 1950s term to say or something, that fog a mirror. But yeah, I think you've got to make sure you avoid doing that. But at the same time, my question, let me ask you this. I'm going to turn it for a second. Sorry, I'm a podcast host too.
That's all
what are
right.
your thoughts? What are your thoughts on, and maybe you don't deal with this much in your space, hiring someone already, because you hear that whole adage again of, training them with your way of doing things, or hiring someone's experience in another agency and, have to retrain them on things that they learn, bad habits and all that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts on that? Do you run into that a lot?
We do. We run into it an awful lot. And my philosophy is you have to make a decision on what kind of agency you are before you do that. So you're either a training agency or you're not, right? And training agencies have a passion for training. They have a way to build somebody and bring them in. They have a lot of ways to test for the fact that they will get insurance, that they're intelligent and that they have the right culture and the right people, and that they're really looking for this person to teach insurance to. But that's the key. You have to be in a place where you want to teach them insurance. It's unfair to take somebody that was a waitress, let's just say, or a waiter, and say, oh, you might be a good insurance agent here, go at it, and then not give them the time that they would need to pick it up. And one chink that we have as insurance people is we think insurance is simple because we've been brainwashed by it for years. I still think it takes a solid 2 years for someone to really grasp insurance. And we expect that they take the test and that they watch us do something once and it's good to go. And so my kind of famous statement is like, I could watch Gordon Ramsay make a steak on YouTube. It doesn't mean that my steak tastes anything like Gordon Ramsay's, right? And so
you're 100%. You're 100% right. And I think it also, go ahead.
No, it's just we just have these high expectations, and it's like it didn't work. And then to me, on the smaller agency side, what ends up happening is they're looking at payroll and they're like, well, I've got all this payroll and they're not doing anything and nothing's changed. And they don't have active patience, which to me, active patience is, it's going to take this time. I'm going to be actively working to get them better, but I have to remain patient. On the larger agency side, you find that people don't want to train them. Either the frontline staff's not good trainers and they shouldn't be doing it to begin with, or they're so overwhelmed that they never give that new person the space. So if you're a training shop, you got that all organized so you can do that and teach people the way you want to do it. But now you can go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, in the smaller shops, they'll come to me, or the startups will say, I need to find someone that's licensed and this, because I don't, necessarily know how to train them or whatnot. But to me, the way I look at it, I'm not afraid to hire someone outside the industry. It's not even licensed for that matter. To say, for example, if you're looking for, and this is an extreme example probably, but if you're looking for a good account manager or CSR type, look at your Chick-fil-A employees. I mean, they're trained so well in customer service and saying the right things. I know that fast food doesn't translate, but yeah, it does. Customer service is customer service. If you're looking for a good salesperson, why not, find someone a used car lot, and we're already compared to them anyway, or, find someone that, you think, man, they were really good at the Apple store or at whatever. And why not approach them and say, hey, here's an opportunity for unlimited potential to make this kind of money, whatever your sales pitch is. But I don't think you should be afraid, if you're a small or a large agency, to look at unlicensed people in a different field or industry and go from there.
Yeah, I don't think that you should be afraid by it at all. I just think you have to manage your own expectations of what commitment you're going to make to them too. It's not just a one-sided situation. And I think you have to know exactly what you're looking for, right? Like, Sometimes,
Yeah.
like your dad said, like they can fog a mirror and they have an insurance license. Let's get them.
Let's go. Yeah.
And I've seen just as many licensed people that, I think their licenses should be revoked for some of the ways that they were writing insurance. And, so the bad habits thing is a big deal. And here's the problem you have in today's hiring marketplace. I'd love to hear what you think about this, Heath, but, we are definitely in a hard hiring market right now. And so in some respects, the people that you are going to find looking for jobs have a reason that they're looking for jobs. And, every now and again, you might hear like an agency merges and like new owners, like stuff like that does happen. They're moving. That's fine. But I can tell you right now, and things are changing a little bit with COVID and people coming back to work and vaccines. We don't need to get political and all that stuff, but like, there are some good people that come up because of their belief system and what some of the, changes agencies are calling people back in or requiring vaccines. So you are going to find a couple of good people like that, but that will have its season and then it will be over, right? That's not your long-term strategy. So.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't have anything, a differing opinion on that. I don't have anything else to add to that, but I do think you're right. I do think it is a season though, and that's going to change sooner than later, I hope. Again, not to get political. Here, I thought we were maybe talking church and politics, but I'm glad that we're into my other passion of insurance.
Well, I'll say this. The other thing is for everyone listening out there, do not be scared of hiring someone without insurance experience, but have a plan, right?
Definitely have a hiring process, have a plan. And I think that hiring process is huge. As if you've listened to enough of these, which I listen every week, by the way, you love your processes and you love your procedures. And I'm sure you've got one for hiring. And I think every agency should have one, large or small. And so I think if you could follow that process, regardless, like you said, people are, like I said earlier, people are all different and each situation is different. But if your process is consistent, then I think you'll get the right people that you need within your agency. And if you don't have a process, call Kelly and get one. But you definitely should.
Well, and here's the other thing I want to say as we wrap up hiring, but we also tell our clients you should forever be hiring. Like it's not just when you have a spot, because that, to me, that's like hiring out of desperation. Like, oh my gosh, someone's leaving. We've got 2 weeks. You aren't going to make a clear-headed decision. What you should be doing is meeting people, interacting with them. You might find someone good that you find a spot for, or you might be saying, this person's not the best fit for my team. I think I can upgrade. And so when you're hiring only when you have to, you should expect to get whatever's out there in the market at that point in time.
Yeah, that's what I tell people when I'm working with people. I tell them all the time, always be looking, always be hiring, every time you turn around, because especially if you got them on the right, like I said earlier, if you got the right deal or structuring that right deal, if you got them on a commission only, what's it going to hurt? As long as you have that commission the right way so it works for you and that, agent or producer, I think you could always be hiring somebody.
Yeah, I agree. Because you just never know, you never know when someone might win the lottery or quit. You have to be
sure.
This is still a people business for the most part. You have to be prepared and be on the offense, not the defense on your people.
Completely.
So let's talk about sales now between the two different agencies sizes.
Okay.
Right? Because I think
sounds like a plan.
Sales is different. For me, personally, I think like as the smaller size, you're looking for producers. You want more production, because that's what's going to get you to grow. When you're on the larger side, you end up having this big book to service as well as sell. And so tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you think with, agencies and sales and generating new business.
I think the biggest problem that people have is like they want to just, throw everything against the wall and just see what sticks. There's no rhyme or reason to what they're chasing after, what they're doing. They want to do personal lines, they want to do commercial lines. They don't know where to go or where to shoot on either one of them, especially in the very beginning, because like you said,
anything.
Let's do it all. And I think that there's a place, especially in, small time rural America, for those generalist agencies. But I think even new agencies starting out or smaller agencies should focus on, some sort of direction or a niche they focus on. No matter, even if that's just your niche is personal lines or your niche is commercial, at least find something so that you're not just one of those throw it against the wall and see what sticks type of person. And so I think one of the things that I work with a lot of my clients or my agents that I've worked with over the years is finding that niche and finding that focus for them, and finding out what they want to focus on, what their hobbies, what their interests are. If they're, a big old boy like me and love restaurants, why not go after restaurant business? Why not, if you're going to go be eating in restaurants every week anyway, you might as well find some and talk to the owners of the business. And or if you love, construction and handiwork and love doing stuff, projects around your house, why not go after construction business? And so many different examples you can go down the line. But I think that you could find those niches within your agency. Or again, like I said, if your niche is personal lines, then you got to figure out where you're going to get those, leads from, whether it's from mortgage lenders or from realtors, whatever it might be. So again, I think it's a long answer to a short question. I think it's just focusing where you're going to, spend your time.
I agree. And I think that's still the same for larger agencies, but with larger agencies, what we see on the new business side is that it's like, they're so focused on new that they forget that they have a whole book of opportunity to cross sell. And they have a whole book of opportunity to ask for referrals from, and to go back after lost customers or old unsold quotes. Like if you get to 10, 15 people plus, you have a database, but we find they all want to go after the newest, biggest thing, like I want 7 million online reviews. I want this. I want to give referrals to mortgage people so they give me referrals back. And I kind of take a different approach with my clients. I'm like, until we have a process for all of the low hanging fruit, we shouldn't spend any money on new business acquisition, because you have it underneath your nose, and we should work that first.
No, I completely agree.
It's not as sexy, Heath. It's not as cool. It's not what the cool it's not what the cool kids talk about in Facebook groups about cross-selling your customers, but it's literally like highest closing ratio, right in front of your face, easiest to execute. But I think we're always trying to be too fancy,
No, I completely agree. And I think that I'm glad to hear you say that, because I did think you were fancy, and I might have thought you might have fallen into some of those fancy things, but you don't. but you don't. So that's good to hear, because I think you're dead on. I think that it's too easy to go after the next shiny object or the next tool or the next thing that Nick Ayers is talking about on whatever Facebook group, whatever it might be, not to talk about somebody in particular, but I think that everybody in these Facebook groups, as you mentioned, or social media groups, is talking about the next greatest thing for leads or to get new business in the door. And I think, like you said, it's in your backyard. Why not just farm that first? Take care of that first. And I would say that to anybody, starting out or experienced agent, captive or independent, you might as well farm what you've got in your backyard first.
Mm-hmm. And, once you do that, then it's okay to go ahead and look at the new side of things, but you better have a sales process when you're a larger agency. Otherwise, what ends up happening is you're sort of, you're chasing your tail a lot. You will find a lot of wasted opportunities.
And there's ways to get those leads you talk about without spending a ton of money and without buying into that shiny object syndrome. And, a lot of those, and again, that all depends on personal lines or commercial lines. I think, and that's another thing I talk to a lot of smaller agencies as they're growing, is to have that departmentalized, to have a personal lines department and a commercial lines department, not have your one account manager selling both commercial and personal lines, because putting those hats on and off could be very confusing and daunting. And it's a lot for that account manager to learn, or producer for that matter. But, if your personal lines, you can, for free, without having a shiny object, you can work with lenders, just by building relationships, going by their office, hanging out, taking them to lunch every now and then, whatever it might be, joining a B&I group, getting involved in your community, doing, working with different people in different avenues, whether it's Chamber of Commerce, whether it's your school board, whether it's whatever it might be. Then you could also spend the money and do old school stuff like direct mail, or you could purchase leads. On the commercial side, you could get into B&I, you could do niches, as we mentioned earlier, you could get involved in podcasting for that matter. There's lots of different ways that you could do that without having to buy into the shiny object syndrome, keep it on a budget, and still generate a ton of leads. I've done it as a producer. I've seen agents do it as a consultant. It's not something you have to spend a ton of money to get business in the door.
Well, and I want to say something between like the agencies that Heath works with and the ones that we do. The transformation has to happen between Heath to Kelly, that the agency owner is no longer the number one producer. The agency owner has to be running the business. They can be lead generation, but they shouldn't be quoting a personal lines quote at some point. And I think what happens a lot of times on the smaller agencies is like the agency owner gets kind of in the rut of being the top producer, and it's scary to let that go until you realize, hey, you could generate the opportunity and have other people, go ahead and take it and run with it and sell it so you can work on the business, not in it all the time.
Well, hey, can I challenge you on that just a minute, though? Let's have a conversation on that. Because
the mayor's throwing down a challenge. Am I getting a speeding ticket?
I'm not the sheriff. I'm just the mayor. But no, I am interested on this because I do talk to a lot of agencies that they get into the business because they love sales. They love to hunt. You know those agents. You're one of those probably listening to this, and you love to hunt. You love to kill. If you're one of those listening, I'm talking to you right now, because then you become an agency owner and you think that because you're an agency owner, you can no longer sell anymore. You have to take care of the house and you have to do all this and take yourself out of that role. But in my opinion, if you're good at sales, if you're good at hunting, if you love to hunt, and if you love to get out there and, eat what you kill and all the terminology you want to use, keep doing that. And I would say surround yourself with staff that can take care of the stuff you're not good at. And maybe even find, some staff that you wouldn't mind even, selling off some equity to, or bringing them in as a partner to take care of the office stuff or the management of staff or taking care of the accounting needs or whatnot. Because most of the time I've seen a producer like myself, I'm at heart, I love to hunt. I'm a true agent at heart. I am not good at accounting. I am not good at organization. I am not good at time management. I'm not good at some of those things as a producer myself. So that's why I would have to surround myself with people that knew how to do that. So I would say if you're a producer and you own your agency, if you're good at producing, I don't care if you're the top producer, as long as you have staff around you that knows how to take care of that. Again, there's my challenge to you on that. You're better at this than I am. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I don't know about that. I think that by the time you get to 10 employees, for you to get to 10 employees and be the top producer is going to be a bit of a challenge. Because at that point, there's a lot of carrier information you have to deal with, technology, like you're really running, a couple $1 million business potentially. And so there has to be a CEO leader at the front. That doesn't mean that you can't have a small book of clients, but it shouldn't be for me, when your agency gets 10, 15 plus employees, if you're the owner and you're selling, 90% of the time, even with the best operations manager, there's other parts of the business that aren't getting tended to that need your leadership. Like at 10, 15 employees, you might have a personal lines head and a commercial lines head and, a producer that all need leadership and management and mentorship too. I just think it's probably surprising to people when you get more employees that there's more management of the business that needs to happen.
I would just, caution people, at least as you're starting out, to stick with what you're good at and stay in your lane if you're good at that, and not try to take on accounting if you're not an accountant.
I think every agency, no matter how big they are, should outsource their accounting, unless you can do it 100% in-house. But like insurance accounting is so delicate and different, and depending on your management system and agency bill and all that other stuff, it's complicated.
Well, every carrier does it differently. So yeah, I'm agreeing with you on that.
Yeah.
So, I just thought, maybe that's again where when we transition from small agency to large agency, that's when you can help transition in that, because as you're still growing, you may have to be the largest producer in the agency for a little while and surround yourself with the best agency staff you can until you get to that point where you need to get involved more. So, no, that's good. I appreciate that. Accepting my challenge.
That's all right. That's all right, man. I think as you grow, and once you get 15 people, don't you want to be 50? So it also depends on what you want to be when you grow up, right? If you really love being a producer and that's what you want to be, then you can design your business that way.
True.
True. And if you want to be an agency that has 50 employees and, that's your goal, then like your day might be different. That's all.
Yep.
So next up, we have the wonderful world of retention, right? So I think
Oh,
retention is
Lord have mercy. Yeah.
different for smaller versus larger clients. So Heath, what's your take on retention for maybe those smaller agencies?
Oh man, I think well, the first thing that I would say on retention with smaller agencies is so many are running, especially startups, are running so fast on getting new business. By the time that first year renewals come around, they don't have a process. They don't know how to do the, renewals. They're like, oh crap, I got my first renewals. What do I do now? And it's
What's going
like,
on?
yeah. And then that's like, wait a minute, I got to take care of this person and go get that person. And then I've got to do all this. And that's where going back to hiring, I think that's a good time for you to start thinking. If you haven't hired anybody yet, once you get your first cycle of renewals, probably when you start thinking about, I need an employee. So you continue to focus on that new business. But again, that's just each their own on small businesses and small agencies. But I do think the first challenge they see is, transitioning from, hunting and gathering and getting all the new business they can to now, cultivating relationships, building that, taking care of the back door, so to speak, and not letting people go. So I think it's that balancing act in the beginning.
Yeah, I could totally see that. And I also think, as you're doing the new business stuff, and if you're maybe a startup scratch agency, you don't really have to worry about retention for a few years because people don't necessarily change every year. And you're a lot of times telling people you have strong relationships with, so your retention is high. And then like year 4 and 5 happens, and that's when it's like, what's going on in the world? Why am I starting to lose people? When you get larger, your bigger challenge though is how do you sell enough to recoup your losses? Because even at a 92% retention ratio, you're still losing several hundred clients a year. And that's a different mindset. Then you really have to work on, if I can get from 92 to 94% retention, that changes your financial game dramatically. And so the important thing that you got to focus on is how do you keep as many people? And that's when sales becomes as important, if not less important than retention, because all of your money is sitting in your currently sold clients. And the more you keep, the more that every single piece of new business means to the agency.
Yeah. And some of the things we've talked about in our conversations you mentioned earlier was, sometimes whether they're a large agency or a smaller agency, you deal with carrier challenges, whether, rate increases, or 1 minute they're coming in telling you, we want to write every this, and their appetite changes the next time they come in the door and say, we had a bad loss ratio last year on that book of business. We're no longer writing that anymore. They have, sometimes even personnel changes can make a world of difference in an agency on retention. You could have had the best underwriter ever, and then all of a sudden that underwriter's gone. And then now you've got a whole different set of issues with retention. Same thing with your marketing reps. You got a great relationship with that marketing rep or branch manager, and all of a sudden they're gone. So I think that plays into no matter the size of the agency or experience, I would say, but you tell me.
Yeah. The other hard part that you have with retention, I think at the larger size is the idea that, your staff isn't going to treat the agency like they own it like you do. So you start to get a little wrinkly about like, well, did you remarket this person? What happened here? What happened here? And you look at everything like individual policies versus the overall greater good. And so one big shift agency owners when they get a little larger have to make is managing by the numbers, not managing by the policy. Because when you manage by the policy, you can always find something that could be done better. When you manage by the numbers and you say your retention went from 92 to 93.5, that should make you really proud, but you can't get into the weeds of every single policy. That's when things get a little hairy and you end up stressing out your staff because they're, constantly being come down on what didn't you do versus, yeah, but on those 3 other renewals, I cross-sold umbrellas. Like you're always looking for the not what you didn't do, not what you did. And that's why we really encourage agencies to focus on the metrics and the holistic side of things versus policy by policy, where I think you're going to get yourself real tripped up pretty quickly. Because if you pour through your cancellation list, you could always find something that could have been done better. But as an agency owner at that size, you have to take it on like, well, it's on me to make sure they have the training. It's on me to make sure we have the conversations. It's on me to make sure that the vision is clear, not just come down on them like this is the policy and this is what the problem is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that talking about managing by the numbers, I think, obviously the old adage again of numbers never lie. And I think that if you focus on it from that perspective, I think you're dead on there. But also think getting your team to think like you do, what, in my opinion, no matter the size of the agency, comes down to a culture thing and communicating your brand, your values, the things that, your agency stand for. And if everybody's on the same page and you're communicating that across all angles and all, venues, then I think that, each person's going to think a little bit closer to the way you do. And I think spending more time, I think, a lot of things that, as agencies grow a little bit that I'll, talk to people about is doing maybe even an agency, like a weekly schedule within your agency sometimes, depending on the agency. Like maybe Monday is book club, and you talk about a certain book. Maybe, Tuesday is one-on-one meetings with all your staff. Maybe you take the day off Wednesday and that's when they're out doing cold calls or whatever they're doing. Maybe on Thursday you're doing some sort of sales training of some sort. Maybe that's their time, one-on-one call with Kelly that week, or, doing some sort of sales call that day. And then, Fridays could be, a check-in day where you, just got to all check in, have a huddle. But if you're spending time doing something like that every day of the week, even if it's for 15, 20 minutes a day, you're around each other, you're communicating that culture. I think you're going to end up just by osmosis, I guess you could call it. Is that an old 8th grade science term? Does that work here? Osmosis?
I think it does work here. I feel like my 8th grade vocabulary teacher would be pleased. No, I mean, that's the number one thing that when we walk into agencies, like every agency says the same thing is communication. We want more communication. We want better communication. And I think we want that as people. I don't think that that's just strictly to agencies. I want better communication with my husband. I want better communication with my family. I want better communication with my staff. It's like, if you could just understand what's going on in my head and we just all knew what each other was talking about, that would be way better. Right. And I think for producers, like agency owners who are heavily on the sales side, communication isn't always their strong point. They're super great communicators to clients, but super not detail orientated sometimes on the backside. Right.
Right. Yeah, I think you're dead on.
I have this napkin and this guy wants to buy insurance. It's like, isn't this amazing? And the person's like, what kind of insurance? Well, we didn't get there. They want to buy insurance. Can't you quote it?
Right. Oh yeah. And that's, that's the other thing altogether. We could talk going back to either sales or retention is figuring out, I guess we'll get into that too, is that time management piece of not wasting time on that napkin and trying to figure out, getting all the information up front. But, going back to communication, I think you're right. I think it's a societal thing. And that's, again, not to get political, but we're seeing that even now, even with the Olympics going on, not to date your podcast, but, there's a lot going on around communication, around self, taking care of yourself with all this kind of stuff. And I think that in agencies, it's just as important, just as crucial to have that communication at any level. Like I said, if you can make it in a sly way or a blatant way of making sure you're communicating everything you need to communicate with your people, it's only going to make your agency that much stronger.
I agree. Well, we have a few minutes left. Let's dive into time management because I do have to wrap up in the next 7 minutes. So time management is something that's like a plague, like maybe it's an epidemic, like not to use a 2021 word. But like every agency I have the pleasure of working with is a problem as far as, going through and saying, hey, time, no one has any time. It's just like everyone's running around like chickens with their heads cut off. So tell us a little bit what that looks like on the smaller agency side.
I think the smaller agency is the chicken most of the time. But yeah, as far as like running around the chicken with their head cut off, I think that's a great analogy because I walk into so many of these agencies. That's what it looks like. And you've seen it before, I'm sure, in larger agencies, but it just looks like chaos sometimes. You can see, sometimes the fear and the look on their eyes of, I don't know what I'm doing, help, because the phone's ringing here and they got people walking in for payments or they've got something going on back there behind them. And then you've got, Mary's off today because their kid's got a snotty nose and at home. And then you've got such and such going on here. There's a lot going on in a small agency. There's not enough manpower to take care of it all. And so I think going back to the processes and going back to having a plan for all these different things are going to be able to help you, whether you're starting out or not. And I tell people when they're starting out, because it's not something I'm good at, But as you're starting out and you're the one man show, so to speak, or maybe it's you and your wife or you and your one staff, you've got to start those process and procedures now and act like you're a big shop now. Get those procedures in place now so that when you do grow, those people will just come in and adopt it early and keep going.
Yeah, and on the larger agency side, I mean, oh my gosh, we see so many so we do we have a 2-year program. We do our assessment and I see all the things, and then we come back and like we have to move people in the right seats in the bus and job descriptions and stuff like that. And we start time management, and it's like five things that I came across this week. People not wearing headsets. Okay. If you're doing this all day and you're writing on a piece of paper, you're doing your work 17 different times, right? People aren't using the management.
They still make those things?
Yeah, it's 100%. And people are like, I don't like a headset. And I literally snapped at a woman this week. She's cool. I can do this to her. And I was like, you know what? Here's the thing. You're the most judgmental person I've met today. And she was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you're literally judging something you haven't even put on your ear. You don't know that you don't like them. And she was just like, I just know. No, you don't. Like you and I know, like I'm doing this 75 hard. And so the biggest thing that stopped me from doing it was like, I can't give up drinking for 75 days. Now it's my favorite thing. I don't know if I'll ever really be a drinker again. Like I'll have a glass of wine here and there, but like I could give it up 100%. It's my favorite part. I'm like, I'm a judger too. We all judge things, but people in insurance, we got to get over the way we've always done things. Otherwise we're going to become Blockbuster and we're all going to be sad about it.
Oh yeah. It's like my kids, they don't want to eat certain things. They know they're not going to like it. And it's just, oh, that is good. And so, yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it's the same thing there. So anyhow, I think going back to, you were talking about headsets and you were talking about that. I didn't know where you were going. I wanted to hear more on that. I was intrigued.
Oh, well, because like people get like all, like if you have a headset, you have to write down on paper, then you have to go process it. There's no first call resolution. There's no all this stuff. People freak out when I say in personal lines and most small commercial, you can quote it over the phone because why would you go and quote a $500 BOP 7 places? Go to the first one, you get rejected, you'll deal with it later. But at a $500 BOP, if the first one doesn't work, it's square peg round hole. You got some other problems that you're going to be dealing with, right? We end up in bigger agencies having all these clients that are not profitable. Like we start tracking walk-ins, we start tracking how many people come in with cash, depending on what your agency setup is. And it's like, okay, all your time is going here. And then the person with the $5,000 package gets none of your time and attention unless they need something.
Well, it happens in the smaller agencies in a different way when you've got John Doe, the agent that's out there calling these people and they're like, yeah, he says he's going to buy, he's going to do this, he's going to do that. And they're chasing that guy for way too long when they need to have a process to say after the second or third time, they say, no, move on and quit trying to chase that guy. And you're wasting so much time chasing a $1,300 homeowner policy when you should just move on to the next guy. That sounds harsh, but at the same time, if you have that mentality, then it's going to be, again, going back to the used car salesman. If you just walk away, that client's going to come back to you if they want to buy from you. They already know usually in the first 10 minutes they're going to buy from you or not. So you need to move on from them and get to the next one and stop wasting time on one. And they spin their wheels so many times in smaller agencies because they want to write everything they can. So everybody that walks in the door is going to buy.
It's like, I got a sale. It's like, but it's a piece of junk.
Yeah, you're exactly right. How many times we're going to touch that account in the next 5 minutes or the next 5 years because you wrote that account? It's going to need all these certificates. They're going to need all these endorsements.
It's going to cancel for non-payment, and then we're going to
5 times. Yeah.
Or it's on the E&S market. They're going to give you a check that you hope clears on Friday at 4:30 when the bank's closed, and you're like,
yep. Yeah.
Or they give you a check with the wrong dollar amount, and you're just like, I can't deal with you. Like, this is not worth it. And then we treat our best customers like crap, the ones we want to get referrals from, and like the whole thing just starts this ecosystem. And by the way, when you're smaller, you do have to write business that maybe you don't write when you're larger. When you're larger, you got to grade your clients and correct that. You can't, you have to be like, we're not rewriting you. If you cancel, you can leave and we don't ever have to see you again. It's going to be great.
But I think that also, it goes back into that time management piece a little bit when you're working small or larger agencies, setting those expectations in the very beginning with your clients to say, here's how this is going to work. Here's what's going to happen. put your processes out in front of them and let them know transparently, this is what's going to happen. And I think that's going to help you with your time management on your end if you're setting that expectation on the front end.
I totally agree. And on that note, we have to depart because I have to hop on a call with one of my bougie clients.
Oh, what? I gotcha. I had a great time visiting with you though and hanging out.
Yeah, listen, 20 person agencies in California aren't going to sell themselves. We gotta go help them. So
that's right. I hear you.
But no, if anybody wants to find the mayor, and maybe you fit into a category with some of the things that Heath is saying resonated you with, Heath, tell us how they can find you.
Real simple, Heath at insurancetownpodcast.com. Or you can just go to the website, insurancetownpodcast.com, and subscribe to the newsletter or the podcast. I'm easy to find.
All
or
right.
You can find me on LinkedIn.
Hit him up on LinkedIn. You can vote for who's mayor is. But Heath, thank you so much for spreading the word, being a guest.
Yes, thank you for all that you do. You've helped so many people that I know, and so I appreciate that.
I know. Maybe sometime we'll see each other again in Arkansas.
Yes, I hope so.
All right, everyone, have a great day. Well, I felt like if I didn't have to hop on another phone call and the landscaper wasn't doing its thing behind me, we would have gone on forever and ever and ever talking about this. But that's the point, is we want to have these conversations so that you can see, no matter who you are and what size your agency is, that there are options and that you're not alone either. And that there's plenty of ways and plenty of connection that you can make in this industry. So if there's something on your mind that's challenging with your business, there is no better time than today to tackle it. I'm telling you that right now. No better time. I know for my businesses, we always say today's the day, just do it. There's no sense in overthinking it. If you have a challenge, it's on us to solve it. And hopefully we brought you some identifications of ways to solve some of the top challenges that we see. Have a great day, everybody. So you just got to hear Heath and I go back and forth all about the top ways agency owners are way too stressed out. And if you listened, Heath talks a lot about some of the smaller scratch startup agencies. And I take a little bit more from the approach of people with over 10 employees. And it's an interesting dynamic because both have their tipping points. At Agency Performance Partners, we specialize in the agencies that have the people problems. And generally that hits when you're about 10 plus employees. And that's just a part of growing. Sometimes you outgrow processes and systems, and it's time to kind of reorganize the situation. And that's why we exist. We have our Agency Performance Program, which is a 2-year program to really re-optimize your agency for growth. We do an assessment, we install our time management principles, talk about renewal reviews and get those going, and then end with some sales training. So over 2 years, your team has the systems and processes in place that you need to take it to the next level. And so if you're interested, I personally only work with 20 agencies every year on this. And so we have a few spots left. We are completely anticipating having all 20 spots sold out in the first year. So we launched it in January, which means that once they're gone, and then we can get you on the wait list. But if you're interested at all and you want to end this year strong, contact us today so we can talk about what that would look like for you and your team. I can't wait to hear from you. And if you're interested in, you're maybe not 10 people, that's okay. Contact Heath. He specializes in those clients and he's going to get you there, and then we'll take it as you hit your next growth spurt. Have a great day, everybody.